Evan. I've worked at 8th Wall for about 3 years now, and I work as a developer support engineer. So I help developers every single day create awesome AR experiences. So very happy to be here and happy to see a lot of familiar faces as well.
Hey everyone, my name is Evan, also a developer support engineer here at 8th Wall, and love building VPS experiences. So can't wait to help y'all if you run into any issues or have any questions about VPS experiences.
Awesome. Thank you guys. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and stop my screen share and go ahead and let Ian take over.
Awesome. Thank you, Pablo. Right. Cool. All right, as I said, I've worked at 8th Wall for about 3 years now, and every single day I'm working with developers, build really awesome experiences. And kind of the questions I get are coding related, design related, kind of how humans interact with space. So I'm getting all sorts of questions all the time, and VPS is certainly like a big question we get a lot. I'm so excited today to kind of talk about an overview about what VPS is, and then we'll go into kind of a step-by-step process on how to grab a VPS wayspot and then add a model to it and kind of position it to your liking, and then add in animations and other things to make a really awesome experience. So we'll start off basically with what is VPS, or Visual Positioning System. If you're unfamiliar, this is a way to anchor virtual content to the real world with very centimeter precision. This is a really cool technology. Is instead of having a AR-based experience that might just be SLAM-based, which means it's a horizontal surface anywhere in the world, this you can anchor specific models or animations to specific locations, and you can also use the mesh of the real world to kind of occlude to give a lot more of an immersive experience. And so, yeah, you have the real mesh of the 3D world, so you can use that as an occlusion. You could highlight it. You could add video textures to it, so it kind of gives you a lot more wiggle room on how immersive and what type of experience you want to build. And so next question is, what are wayspots? And wayspots are unique locations in the real world, and public wayspots are used for production projects. So these are places in the real world that have been scanned and approved by Niantic. And these are, publicly accessible, safe areas where users can, once having access via URL, can go to this wayspot, and then they will be able to anchor or localize to this. And then the AR experience that you've built they'll be able to visualize and interact with it via these public wayspots. And there's thousands of these all over the world, and we're continually growing the amount of wayspots, and you can help out with that as well, to essentially create a digital duplicate of the world. And then there's also something what we call private scans, and these are used for testing or personal projects. So as an example, a couple months ago, I created a test project of my living room where I was able to scan my couch and my TV and my rug and everything, and kind of get a detailed mesh to begin experimenting and testing with kind of how I could shoot physics objects and bounce off the mesh, or I could interact with the mesh and like tap to place 3D objects. And this is a really nice way to be able to test in your house rather than going to a specific way spot. So I do this a lot while I'm testing and experience, and it's super helpful to actually visualize it in real time. And next is the Geospatial Browser. This is, you can get to this via the Cloud Editor. It's one of the tabs that have kind of a map icon on it. And this is a 3D map of the world. So you're kind of a top-down view. And with this, you can see all the different way spots with kind of all their different themes. If it's like a statue or a park or a garden, etc., you can kind of explore and click on these icons and look at the 3D mesh themselves. So in the photo here on the right, we have a 3D mesh of the 8th Wall office, and you can kind of see, the 8th Wall picture there and the couches. And again, this is the 3D mesh that you're going to be able to grab and bring into your eighth wall project and then use that as occlusion or the ability to interact with that mesh. So while you're on the Geospatial browser, you'll see kind of a localization score or alignment. And this is essentially, pretty straightforward, but good means you're able to localize very well with this. Fair is going to be okay. And then private scans are going to be lowest. And so one thing to keep in mind when you're scanning or creating a wayspot is to have something kind of centered in the center of your scene rather than kind of waving around your device sporadically. And similarly, for wayspots, if you've ever used image targets in augmented reality, feature points is something that's really important to be able to localize an AR experience. So you could imagine if you scanned a completely white, lightless wall, that it would have a pretty low localizability score because there's not many feature points there. It's completely white. There's no way for kind of the computer vision to understand the space that it's in and being able to kind of to localize your AR experience too. So having an environment that is very rich in feature points, which is usually the case in outdoor areas, for example, trees, grass, rocks, bricks, etc. These are things that really help the computer vision localize your AR experience. So now we'll go to the VPS workshop itself. And I'll talk about kind of learning objectives, and then we'll have pauses throughout this to make sure everybody's kind of understanding the process. So to start off, I'll just play a simple VPS experience that we're going to kind of use as a learning point as I go through this. And first objective is we're going to add a wayspot to your project using the Geospatial browser, which I showed previously. And then we'll add a 3D model to your scene using the A-frame inspector. So here on the right, I've created this VPS wayspot outside of the Ferry building, which is located here in San Francisco and is also the headquarters of the Niantic office. And I got an old image of the Ferry building and was able to pinpoint the exact location of where that image was originally taken. And then using VPS, localize that, position it so that, passerbyers could pull up their phone, interact, and kind of see the overlay of that old image with the today's version of the Ferry building. And so we'll be able to localize and position this using the A-frame inspector. And then at the end, you can see your scene come to life using VPS for the web, as shown here on the right. So number one, we're going to start by creating a project. So if you can navigate to eighthwall.com, you'll click on the project library, which will be a tab on the top header of the website. And then you'll search for A-frame VPS template. Here's the link to it right here as well. And I can quickly show this too. So you can go to project library here and then type in VPS, and we'll have our Lightship VPS, and specifically the A-frame VPS template will pop up, and then you can click clone that. And then once you're select that project and cloned it, we're going to ask you to select this specific workspace. Some of you most likely just have a single workspace, but others may have multiple workspaces. And then under project URL, create a name for your project. For example, something VPS, you could call it, historical VPS or test VPS. And then for now, as this is being an example, you can set it as demo use and then click create. And then this will create a project that will be in your workspace that you can go back to at any time. So this will be our first checkpoint. And just waiting to make sure kind of everybody is on the same page here and are able to successfully clone and create this project. And I'm going to just get verified from Pablo or Evan to let me know when to move on.
Yeah, it looks like we're getting a thumbs up here.
So
Cool. Yeah, I think you're good to go.
awesome, thank you. All right, we're gonna move on to the cloud editor, which is gonna be kind of a central point in the building blocks to your project. So to start off, we're gonna go to the editor itself, which is gonna be the second tab on the cloud editor. And this is gonna be where all your code, JavaScript files are gonna be located. And for this example, we're just gonna stick with the body.html file. It's gonna be the only code that we're gonna be changing. We're gonna keep it as simple as possible here. And then to upload our assets, we're gonna just drag and drop them into the cloud editor in the future here under the assets. And you'll also grab the link to this and type it in for your source. And then if you make any changes in the cloud editor via the HTML file, a JavaScript file, or uploading assets, you're going to want to make sure to save and build to be able to preview that experience. And that's something that beginners sometimes forget to do is they'll preview it and then they'll be like, why is my experience not updating? But just making sure to save and build before you launch any changes. So second here, we're going to add a wayspot from the Geospatial Browser. So the Geospatial Browser is going to be found via this map icon here. And as I said previously, this is a big map of the world, top-down view. And once you click on this icon, the Geospatial Browser will start in Palo Alto here. But if you click this central icon here on the top left that pops up, this will kind of take you to your current location, or you can use the search tab to search an address near you. And then we'd suggest picking a wayspot that's kind of around you. And then these icons are going to show like parks or statues around your area. Cool. And then, yeah, as I was saying, yeah, you can go in the search bar to search for the wayspot. Here on the right, we have a VPS mesh of the Niantic office. We have this really interesting entrance that's kind of shaped like an old ship. And so, for example, you can check out the VPS meshes around you and pick one that you like or you find interesting that you want to experiment with. And then next, you can add that mesh to your project. So on the bottom right, there's going to be a button that says add to project. You click this and you will see it drop down below to your project locations. And then this has then verified that your VPS mesh has been added to your project. And then if you want to actually have the VPS mesh itself, you can download it by clicking the down arrow icon on the far right. And there are also settings to the complexity of the VPS mesh. You could have a high polygon count mesh, medium count, or low poly count, and then also different types of texture settings for those. For our use case, and specifically for any occlusion in a VPS experience, we suggest having low poly count and then a textureless mesh. But again, depending on what type of experience you're building, you can use different mesh types. But kind of a common rule when building web AR experiences is to keep the polygon count as low as possible, just for loading and processing during the AR experience. All right, second checkpoint. Making sure everybody had their time. I know this might take a little bit longer because you're kind of exploring the Geospatial Browser and looking at meshes, but if we're all good to go, I will continue. So next, more of an exciting part is adding your content or your 3D model to your project. And so to do this, we'll go back to the code tab here, and then you can choose a 3D model of your own that you have on your computer, or you can download one off Sketchfab, or we have one here of Dodie, which if you go to this link, you'll be able to download that, bring it onto your computer, and then drag that into the assets folder. And then for myself, I just have a model from Blender, a simple plane with a that building image as a texture to it. So I'll give this a second for everybody. 8th.io/Dodie GLB if you want that model. Cool. So to add the asset to your project, you're going to just drag that .glb model onto your assets, and then you'll see it load. And then GLB models is what we recommend building on the web. So if you have an FBX model, if you're building a project, there's just online converters that can convert to GLB model types. Or I usually suggest using Blender, which is a free 3D modeling software, and it has it's really easy to be able to convert to GLB model types. And then once you've uploaded your 3D model, the eighth wall viewer allows you to kind of rotate it, zoom in and out of it. And then we've also updated our viewer now to check out lighting settings, or you can see kind of the polygon count of the mesh, etc. We updated this a couple months ago. And then you can update the file names as well by clicking on the files and then naming them as you want. So we are on our third checkpoint, and just verifying that everybody's doing all right. Cool, cool. I'm seeing some thumbs up.
Looks like we're good. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so next we're going to add our VPS mesh path. So once you've uploaded your VPS mesh, and then you've also uploaded a 3D model that you want to add to your project, on line 15, you're going to change the source attribute to the wayspot mesh or whatever you named it. You could have called it, you know, wayspot mesh.glb or mesh.glb or our model.glb. So on line 15, you're going to just put in that ./assets, which is the folder name, and then the name of your GLB. And then we'll do the same for our 3D model. In my case is that photo of the old ferry building, or you might have the Dodie model or a model that you uploaded yourself. So you'll just, again, do the ./assets/ and then the 3D model file name. And I'll just show this on my screen real quick too. I'll pull up my, so yeah, just an example, I have the ferry building GLB here under assets, and then the VPS mesh under assets as well. And then what we'll need to do next is to grab the name of our VPS mesh. So we'll go back to the Geospatial Browser on the map icon, and then under our VPS mesh, which I'll show from my screen again here. So we'll go back here, and then you can scroll down and find the name to your wayspot, and then you'll can copy it. You know, this one is entrance vest. I can, you know, Command C, and then I'll go back to my my code editor, and then I can put in the name of my wayspot, for example, like right here. So make sure to do that, and then that kind of connects your wayspot to your 8th wall project. And then, yeah, I kind of showed this. So you're just adding that wayspot name in your cloud editor. And everybody's here is going to have a different name, depending on what wayspot you selected around your area or wherever on the world you decided to add it. Cool. So again, just a quick checkpoint, making sure everybody's got their wayspot name and correctly added it. I know some of them might be kind of long, so just making sure you've copied all the characters over correctly will be important. and then making sure you've downloaded that 3D mesh as well. And also I want to note that all these steps can be done with private meshes as well. So if you're testing at home, this is the same process that you would take. For example, if you're scanning your living room, you scan that, you upload it. Private scans are usually going to be ready within 30 minutes. And so that's why we can do a private test for this Cre8te session, but at home after this, you can certainly scan within 30 minutes, you can get that private mesh and then add that name into your project to start testing with. All right, so we'll talk about Bespoke VPS. So this allows you to develop and test VPS experience remotely, or remote authoring, sorry. And what's really nice about this is with private VPS meshes, like, yes, you can test those at home, but if you want to see a way spot from the real world and be able to position objects within that way spot, remote authoring really helps with this because you're able to see the mesh and then you can move 3D objects to kind of position them correctly depending on that 3D mesh. And so we will be using the A-frame inspector for remote authoring, which is a really helpful tool. And all you have to do is add the desktop development component within your A scene. And so essentially at the top of your project, of your body.html file, you'll have the A scene, and then at the bottom there, you'll have XR web. And so what you'll do is just return and add the desktop development. Make sure this caret here is outside and that you're not returning after the caret here. And then you'll just do desktop-development. And this will initiate the remote desktop development. Cool. And then again, making sure to save and build, and then waiting for the editor to build, and then we'll click the preview button. And here you're not going to click the simulator. You're going to actually click on the QR code itself, which will open a new tab for you. And you can then it will automatically open the A-frame inspector. Cool. And then once the A-frame inspector is opened, it should open automatically. We have some code that runs this, but if not, you can on Mac Control Option I or Windows Control Alt I, and this should open up kind of a 3D viewer. If you're similar with Blender, it would look kind of like a viewer where you can kind of rotate and move around. And you should see that the mesh, the 3D model mesh that you uploaded, and the 3D model. And these might be a little bit off or not perfectly aligned, just the way that the mesh is uploaded or the pivot point of your or origin point of your 3D model. So just note here on the right, this is post positioning where I've taken that model and then I positioned it kind of where I wanted it to be. That yours might be kind of far away from each other. So we'll wait here for a checkpoint. I know this part might be a little bit more complicated as you're starting to see these in 3D and might be trying to find your 3D model or your VPS mesh. So again, just the steps is desktop development, component add, then make sure to save and build, preview the build in a new window, and then this should automatically open the A-frame inspector.
Sorry, could you show the body.html again? Just
Yeah.
sure we know what to write. Thanks.
Yeah, and are you talking about the desktop development?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you'll just essentially at the
just that.
Yeah, at your top of your body.html, yeah, just type desktop development here.
Perfect.
And
Thank you.
yeah, of course. Yeah, and then you can also reference the logic for that component, which should be in the project as well. So cool. How's everybody else doing? Thumbs up.
Yeah, looks like we're having another question about the body.html.
Okay.
Barna, do you mean this desktop development portion, or would you want?
Oh yeah, that was the same thing. Thank you.
Oh, okay, cool, awesome. I'm just making sure it wasn't
Thanks.
adding the mesh part. Cool.
Yeah. So you're seeing the 3D viewer now. Should, okay, cool. All right, and then as I was saying, depending on the origin point of your 3D model or the origin point of your VPS mesh, they may be pretty far apart or they kind of near each other. So what you can do is take your 3D model, make sure your 3D model only, do not move the VPS mesh at all, because the anchor point, origin point of that VPS mesh is really important to localization, especially if you're going to use it for occlusion. So make sure to only move the 3D model. And if you've already moved the VPS mesh, just exit and reload. And then you can, move with the arrows. You can click R to change the scale, E to change rotation, and then you'll kind of see these updated information on the top right in the informational window. Then again, we'll do a checkpoint while people kind of position their 3D models. And again, I strongly suggest you in private scans in your house. This is how I initially learned, was scanning my living room again or my kitchen, and then just placing like a cube above my sink or above my couch. It's and it's pretty cool. I mean, initially as a developer, just to see like something anchored in your house when you move your phone up. So private meshes are really helpful for initial development and testing. All right. I think we're good on this checkpoint. Move forward. So once you've moved your 3D model, what's important is we're gonna need to copy over those numbers. So depending on where you've positioned it, you're gonna make sure to get those coordinates, or if you've rotated it in any way or scaled, you're gonna keep that window open, and then we're gonna do some copy paste of those transforms. So here, yeah, this is pointing out for this example, we've rotated this model a little bit, positioned it, etc. And then we'll return to the cloud editor. And on line 36, we're gonna add position, rotation, and scale attributes to the model, depending on what you've changed. So if you just positioned it, you'll just add that. But depending on what attributes you've done, just make sure to add that. So here we have position, rotation, and scale. And just to go back, I'll pull that back up again, but we're just taking this from the transforms from the A-frame inspector, and then we're just putting them into code here within our project. So this is under the 3D model line 30, under line 36, not the VPS mesh. So just making sure everybody does that correctly. And then we're going to save build and preview. So yeah, save and build, wait for the cloud editor, finish building the project, click preview and open the QR code, and then we can scan it. And you can do this at a private test VPS mesh. Here, you'll have to go to the way spot itself, but you can certainly still view it. And for example, from my transforms and maneuvering that photo of the ferry building, this is what it's going to finally look like at the final way spot here. So I've copied those transforms of where I positioned that image. And then now when you go to the ferry building here, you're able to kind of see that old historical image overlaid. So that is our quick workshop overview. So I hope everybody learned something and got to add something with VPS.
Cool. Ian, can we just go over everything that we went over? Thanks.
Right. So cool. So we added a way spot to your project using the Geospatial Browser. We added virtual objects to your scene using the A-frame inspector. And then lastly, you get to see your scene come to life through VPS for the web. Awesome. And then here are some helpful resources. We have the Eighth Wall Project Library, which Evan, myself, and Tony have built a lot of the projects for, and we build a lot of these projects because of developer questions. So if you ever have any questions or want help on a project, reach out to us, and we could certainly help build kind of a sample project, which would certainly help other developers as well. And then also, as Pablo mentioned earlier, we now are moving from the Eighth Wall Slack actually to our Eighth Wall forum, which I'm super excited for because the Eighth Wall Slack previously was just harder to search. And when the support team or other developers would answer with some really helpful tips, they sometimes would get lost. And now this is all searchable on the web, and it's going to be up there forever for people to take a look at. And I know, in the past, for me, forums have been extremely helpful during development. It's, the fastest way to kind of solve problems that I've run into during development. So I'm really excited about that. And then the Wayfair app and documentation we have on eighthwall.com, which will help you kind of showcase how to scan and create way spots of your own. So some of the Wayfair features is that you can create a private scan for VPS testing, like I stated before, some of the ones that I did in my living room. And then what's really cool is you can contribute additional scans for current public waste spots or create waste spots of your own. And then you can download this app on iOS or Android, and you'll need this. You'll need to also have your Eighth Wall login credentials once you have this app downloaded, because you'll need to log into the Wayfarer app to be able to scan that. And also make sure when you're in the app to select the workspace that you want the VPS mesh for as well before you start scanning. So just some tips to keep in mind. And then we'll leave some time for Q&A.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Ian. I really appreciate that workshop. So yeah, we have had a couple of questions coming in already from the Q&A here on Zoom. So I'm just going to quickly read through some of these and answers that Evan has already provided. For all of you that are in there, please feel free to kind of check those as well. So we had a couple questions regarding, what is the best way to create an experience on many public benches in a park? So that was a really interesting question regarding staying in one general location, but using multiple spots. So Evan's answer was VPS locations no longer need to be approved for development purposes. Even if a VPS location is rejected, you can still use that location to build an AR experience. So then goes into a little bit more about the approval process. So something to keep in mind. We have a new question in the chat here from Dane. How can I create custom waste spots for a client? It can be publicly available, but it's off the beaten path for somewhere. Eighth Wall would create a waste spot. Cool. Evan or Ian, do you want to take that question?
I'm not sure if that makes total sense. Do you want me to clarify?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I just realized I didn't type that correctly. You can make these waste spots, private waste spots for development. But what if we wanted to actually deploy that? Like we build a project for a client at a private waste spot. Is there a submission process to get those officially approved so that they show up on the Eighth Wall Geospatial browser, I guess?
Yeah. So as of right now, waste spots for any commercial-based project need to be publicly accessible. So for example, if your client had like a private office, that unfortunately wouldn't be able to be approved by Niantic currently, unless there's a part of their office that was publicly accessible to anybody, then that could be approved. So things I like to think of, I guess, are museums. Not a client office per se, but the fact that a museum, you may need a ticket to get into it, but it's essentially anybody can access it. So we've had a couple of VPS experiences where
That's the example I was looking for. Is it's an
yeah.
outdoor museum.
Okay.
It's ticketed, but does that qualify for a waste spot that can be approved?
Yeah. As long as it's accessibly publicly accessible, so that anybody from the public could, in essence, buy a ticket and go to it. It's certainly yes, that will be approved.
Cool.
The only thing would be if it was, private company office or something, that wouldn't be a use case, but
Mm.
yeah, that would certainly work.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Cool.
of course.
A couple of unanswered questions in the Q&A, one from Derek. How many scans can we make? Are there limitations to scans? So I guess really a general overview of like scanning would be helpful here. Yeah.
Yeah, so we have a lot of helpful documentation in Eighth Wall on the Eighth Wall website about how to scan, and we can certainly send that over. But as I initially stated, was just like having a focal point and the feature points of the environment is really important. And then for creating a waste spot, there's a certain amount of scans that you'll need to create at certain times of the day, which is just important for localization. And the amount of scans, I mean, I don't think there's a cap, unless Evan knows anything. I mean, I think you can scan as many waste spots as you want. More the merrier, certainly.
Cool. Awesome. Next question from Kyle. Can a single project have multiple VPS meshes and different scenes and animations/videos?
So you can certainly have different scenes, animations, videos, but for the specific VPS mesh, that you could just have one VPS mesh. I mean, you could create an experience where you maybe you go back and then you click on another VPS mesh, but when those initially load, you'll have to exit and enter into another scene to load a new VPS mesh. So, for example, if you're at like a football stadium and you have a bunch of VPS meshes, it's not going to like continually relocalize as you walk around. And this isn't a good use case either. So having like strategically placed VPS meshes where you could like enter and exit and enter into a scene when you're at that specific VPS mesh is probably the best use case.
One more question from Kyle. Do we need to request waste spots to be made available for public use, or are they evaluated as scans come in, and is that sufficient?
So for any waste spot to be publicly accessible, it needs to be approved by Niantic, and this is kind of a process where again we're gonna have to be scanning at certain times of the day, and then we will be checking kind of the safety of the location, and then kind of if it's a good waste spot or not. So yeah, your second question, or would they have other scans coming in? So yeah, it will need to become a waste spot will need to be approved by Niantic. Unless it's a private scan, then that will be ready within like 30 minutes usually, and this is just for development or testing purposes.
I'll just add in like some of our policies have changed somewhat recently. So even if it is rejected, you can still use it for development. The approval process is more so related to whether these are going to actually show up in like Niantic games like Pokemon Go.
Got it. Thank you. Next question from Rick. Is the waste spot mesh we import as an asset a conglomerate of all of the scans? So if they see holes, do they need to address them in a new scan?
So I think for waste spots, like there's a number of different, you can select through different scans for that specific waste spot. Um, so I don't think that you'll need to rescan. I mean, depending on like the localizability score, I mean, you can certainly improve the scan itself, but holes don't necessarily suggest like bad localizability. For example, like if you had the white wall and it was no holes at all and super well scanned, it's still gonna not localize very well because of the features and the nature of the scan itself. And then if you have a mesh of outside that may have a couple more holes than that one, but it just has a lot of feature points, it could be really helpful. Depending if you're creating like maybe a physics-based experience where you don't want, if you're shooting balls at a mesh and there's holes where like the mesh doesn't exist, where like the physics will go through, like that might be something you might want to fix yourself, but that wouldn't affect localizability.
Yeah, just to add on, Mal asked a similar questions. Is there a way of downloading the entire combined mesh rather than just one of the scans, which is not something available today. So we actually don't even really have a way at the moment where you can visualize the fused or aligned mesh, but you can kind of get a sense for like if there's like big gaps in your scan by kind of cycling through the available scans. But yeah, there's not a way to see kind of like the fused mesh at least yet. But yeah, as Ian mentioned, like even if there are holes in your scan, you can take your own scan using like whatever app you like. Scanniverse is what like we've used previously, and then you can like use that scan to like align that with your WasteBot in like Blender or the A-frame inspector. That way you know exactly what scan is being used.
Yeah, and I mean to note on that as well, it's like if I'm creating a waste spot, like you could use a Scanniverse, or it's just all about alignment. So the scan that you download from the Geospatial browser has a specific 3D model origin point or anchor point that is needed to localize your AR experience. So if you upload that to Blender, you'll see that kind of anchor point. And so as long as you're aligning things, I mean, in essence, you could rebuild the whole scan, if you're a 3D artist, or you bring in a different scan. It's like however you get that information, you can just align it with that anchor point, which is really important. So.
Great, thank you all so much. A lot of great questions there. Usually that's what comes with VPS workshops or ATalks, a lot of great questions. So thank you all so much for participating. Evan, thank you so much for answering all the questions in the Q&A as we were going through the workshop. That's really helpful. Ian, thank you so much for leading the workshop. That was amazing. If you all have any additional questions regarding this, or if you stumble across any issues while developing, please post those in the forum, and our developer team can support there as well.